Picture this. You're sitting at your desk, crushing your workload like you always do, when your manager stops by with that familiar look on their face. You know the one. The slightly apologetic smile that says they need something, and they need it from you because you're the only one who can actually get it done right. Hey, I know you're swamped, but Johnson just dropped the ball on the Henderson account, and we need someone reliable to fix this mess. You're the only person I trust with something this important. And just like that, you've inherited someone else's disaster while Johnson is probably scrolling through TikTok in the break room. Sound familiar? Here's what nobody tells you about being really good at your job. It's not a ladder to success. It's a prison with a nice view. While you're staying late, fixing everyone else's mistakes, and consistently delivering exceptional work, the mediocre guy in the cubicle next to you just got promoted to a position you didn't even know was open. My name is John, and I spend way too much time thinking about why talented, hardworking people get stuck in their careers, while less competent people seem to float effortlessly into better positions. If you've ever wondered why being excellent at your job doesn't lead to the rewards you were promised, or why you're constantly drowning in work while others coast by, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it helps explain this career-limiting paradox. Now, before we dive into the mechanics of how competence becomes a trap, let me paint you a picture of what this actually looks like in the real world. You started this job 3 years ago. Maybe you were excited, maybe you needed the paycheck, or maybe it was just a stepping stone to something better. Either way, you came in ready to prove yourself, and prove yourself you did. You learned the systems faster than anyone expected. You started noticing inefficiencies and fixing them without being asked. When problems came up, you solved them. When deadlines got tight, you delivered. You became the person everyone could count on. You thought this was how you got ahead. You thought being indispensable meant you were valuable. You thought competence would be rewarded with promotion, raises, and opportunities. You were wrong. Here's what actually happened instead. You became too valuable right where you are. Your manager looks at you and doesn't see potential for growth. They see the solution to every problem that crosses their desk. They don't think, how can I develop this person? They think, thank God, I don't have to worry about this falling apart. And here's the part that will probably make you angry. Your manager isn't promoting you because promoting you would make their life harder. Right now, you're solving problems they don't even have to think about. You're making them look good to their bosses. You're the safety net that catches every mistake anyone else makes. Why would they give that up? This is what I call the competence curse, and it affects millions of talented people who can't figure out why their careers feel stuck despite doing everything right. The curse works like this. The better you are at your current role, the more invested your organization becomes in keeping you exactly where you are. Not because they don't value you, but because they value you so much in your current position that they can't imagine the department functioning without you. Let me show you how this plays out with actual numbers, because once you see the mathematics of this trap, you'll understand why escaping it requires a completely different strategy than just working harder. According to research from the Harvard Business Review, high performers receive 60% more work than their average colleagues. Not 10% more, not 20% more, 60% more work. Now, you might think that means they're getting paid 60% more, or that they're advancing 60% faster. But here's the reality. High performers receive an average salary increase of just 2.3% annually, compared to 1.8% for average performers. That's a difference of half a percentage point. You're doing 60% more work for 0.5% more pay. Think about that for a second. You're carrying the weight of almost 2 full-time employees, and your reward is an extra $500 per year if you're making $100,000. That's not compensation. That's exploitation with a smile. But it gets worse. The same research shows that high performers are 50% less likely to be promoted than average performers. Yes, you read that right. Being exceptionally good at your job makes you less likely to advance, not more likely. Why does this happen? Because promoting you creates a problem your manager doesn't want to deal with. Who's going to handle all the work you're currently doing? They'd need to hire someone new, train them, hope they're even half as competent as you, and deal with all the mistakes that person will inevitably make during the learning curve, or they could just keep you right where you are and avoid that entire headache. Now let's talk about what happens to the people who aren't as competent as you. This is where the system reveals its true nature, and it might make you want to throw your laptop out the window. The mediocre performer isn't burdened with 60% extra work. They're doing the bare minimum to not get fired. This gives them time and mental energy to do things that actually advance careers. They're networking with people in other departments. They're volunteering for high-visibility projects that don't require much actual work. They're playing golf with executives. They're politicking, schmoozing, and positioning themselves for opportunities. Meanwhile, you're buried in spreadsheets at 8 p.m. on a Friday, fixing a problem that wouldn't exist if people just did their jobs correctly in the first place. You don't have time for office politics because you're too busy actually working. Here's something that might blow your mind. Multiple studies have shown that job performance accounts for less than 15% of career advancement in most organizations. Less than 15%? That means 85% of what determines whether you get promoted has nothing to do with how well you do your job. It's about visibility, relationships, politics, and most importantly, your manager's incentive structure. And right now, your manager's incentive structure is perfectly aligned against promoting you. Let me break down the actual mechanics of how this trap gets built around you, brick by brick, until you're completely stuck. It starts innocently enough. You do good work on a project. Your manager notices and gives you another one. You deliver again. Now you're seen as reliable. This is where the trap starts closing. Your manager begins routing more important work to you because they know it'll get done right. Other people start asking for your help because you actually know what you're doing. Before long, you're involved in every critical project, every emergency situation, every complex problem. You've become what's called a load-bearing employee. You're the structural pillar holding everything up. And structural pillars don't get moved, they get built around. Here's what this looks like in practical terms. Let's say there's a promotion opportunity that opens up. Your manager has 3 options: promote you, promote someone mediocre, or hire externally. If they promote you, they lose their most valuable problem solver and inherit a massive transition headache. If they promote the mediocre person, that person might fail, but at least the department keeps functioning because you're still there to catch the pieces. If they hire externally, they get fresh talent, new ideas, and they don't lose you. Guess which option looks most appealing to a manager trying to minimize their own risk and workload? This is why external hires for senior positions make an average of 18 to 20% more than internal promotions for the same role. Companies would literally rather pay a stranger more money than promote the person who's been carrying the team for years, because promoting you disrupts the system, and the system is designed to resist disruption. But here's where the psychology gets really interesting, and this is the part that keeps people trapped even when they intellectually understand what's happening. You start to internalize a belief that doing more work will eventually be recognized and rewarded. This belief is so deeply ingrained in how we think about careers that it's almost impossible to shake. You've been taught since childhood that hard work pays off, that excellence matters, that if you just keep your head down and do great work, opportunities will come. This isn't just career advice. It's part of the fundamental American mythology about how success works. So when the promotion doesn't come, your brain doesn't conclude that the system is broken. It concludes that you haven't worked hard enough yet. You need to do more, be better, prove yourself further, and so you take on even more work, stay even later, and deliver even more exceptional results. Your manager is thrilled. You're doubling down on exactly the behavior that makes you too valuable to promote. You're building your own prison and calling it dedication. There's also something called the confidence gap that happens when you're stuck in competence mode. You start believing that you're only good at your current specific role. You've been doing it for so long, and you've become so specialized that you can't imagine yourself doing anything else. I see this constantly. Someone who's been crushing it in their role for 5 years will say things like, I'm just good at this specific thing. I don't know if I could handle a management role. Meanwhile, the person who got promoted to that management role was barely competent at their previous job and spends half their time asking you how to do things. The difference isn't competence, it's mindset. The mediocre performer sees every role as learnable. The high performer sees themselves as defined by what they currently do. Here's something else that happens when you're really good at your job. You develop what psychologists call expert blindness. You've become so proficient that you've forgotten how hard it was to learn. You've automated so many processes in your brain that you don't even remember what it feels like to be a beginner. This makes you bad at delegating, which makes your manager even less likely to promote you. Because if you can't teach others to do what you do, you're not management material. You're a specialist. And specialists don't get promoted, they get utilized. Now let's talk about what happens to your earning potential when you fall into this trap. This is where the numbers get really depressing. According to data from the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the average raise for staying in your current position is 3 to 5% annually. The average increase for switching companies is 10 to 20%. The average increase for switching companies and moving up a level is 20 to 40%. Let's run the math on what this means over a decade. Say you're making $60,000 right now. If you stay in your current role being excellent, getting your 4% annual raises because you're so valuable, in 10 years you'll be making about $88,800. If you job hop every 2 to 3 years with 15% increases each time, you'll be making over $140,000 in that same 10-year period. That's a difference of more than $50,000 per year. Over your career, that compounds to hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost earnings. But it's not just about the money. It's about the opportunities, the skills, the experiences, and the career trajectory you're sacrificing by being too good at one thing. While you're becoming the world's foremost expert on your company's specific processes, other people are building diverse skill sets, expanding their networks, and positioning themselves for executive roles. Here's where people usually push back on this analysis. They'll say, "But Nick, I like being good at what I do. I take pride in my work. I'm not interested in playing political games just to get ahead." And I completely understand that sentiment. There's real satisfaction in mastering a craft and doing excellent work. But let's be honest about what you're actually choosing. You're not choosing excellence over politics. You're choosing to let other people profit from your excellence while they play the game and win the rewards. You're choosing to work harder for less money while less competent people coast into better positions. That's not integrity, that's just bad strategy. The brutal truth is that in most corporate environments, there's no moral victory in being the hardest worker. Your boss isn't going to remember your dedication when they're looking for someone to promote. They're going to promote whoever positioned themselves best for the opportunity, regardless of who actually deserved it. And here's the part that should really make you angry. The executives at the top of your organization aren't there because they were the most competent individual contributors. They're there because they understood that competence is just the entry ticket. Advancement requires a completely different skill set. Think about your CEO. Are they the best salesperson the company ever had? The best engineer? The best accountant? Probably not. They're people who learned how to manage up, build political capital, and position themselves for opportunities. They might be competent, but competence isn't what got them to the top. So if you want to break out of the competence trap, you need to understand what actually drives career advancement. And I'm going to tell you something you probably don't want to hear. You need to become strategic about your visibility while simultaneously becoming less available to be exploited. This doesn't mean doing bad work. It means being selective about what work you take on. It means learning to say no without getting fired. It means understanding that your manager will take everything you're willing to give, so you need to set boundaries about what you're willing to give. Here's a practical example. Next time your manager comes to you with extra work because you're the only one who can do it right, try this response. "I'd love to help with this, but I'm currently at capacity with projects A, B, and C. Which of those should I deprioritize to make room for this new project?" Notice what you're doing here. You're not saying no. You're forcing your manager to make a choice about priorities. You're making them confront the fact that you're overloaded instead of just absorbing unlimited work like a sponge. Most managers, when faced with this question, will either find someone else to do the work or will admit that the other projects are actually more important. Sometimes they'll say, "Just fit it in somehow," at which point you've documented that you're being asked to do impossible things, which protects you later. But here's what's really happening. You're training your manager to see you as someone with boundaries and priorities, not as an infinite resource to be exploited. This is a fundamental shift in how you're perceived. You also need to become more visible outside your immediate circle. This means volunteering for projects that interface with other departments, attending company events where executives will be present, contributing to cross-functional initiatives that get noticed by people above your manager. I know this sounds like playing politics, and you're probably rolling your eyes right now. But here's the thing. If you're not visible to the people who make promotion decisions, it doesn't matter how competent you are. You're competing against people who are making sure everyone knows their name. This isn't about being fake or manipulative. It's about making sure your work is seen by people who matter. Right now, your manager is probably taking credit for your work in meetings you're not invited to. The executives think your manager is brilliant because you're making them look brilliant. You need to change that dynamic. Here's another strategy that makes people uncomfortable but is absolutely necessary. You need to start looking at external opportunities even if you're not planning to leave. This serves multiple purposes. First, it shows you what the market values. Second, it gives you negotiating leverage. Third, it reminds you that you have options. Too many competent people stay in roles way too long because they've convinced themselves they can't do anything else or they owe loyalty to a company that would replace them in a week if it served their interests. Going through the interview process at other companies is a reality check about your actual market value. Often, you'll discover you're being underpaid by 20 to 30% compared to what other companies would offer for your skills. Armed with that information, you can have a very different conversation with your current employer about compensation and advancement. And here's what's crazy. Sometimes the only way to get promoted at your current company is to get an offer from somewhere else. Suddenly, when they're at risk of losing you, they'll find budget for a raise and discover a promotion opportunity that didn't exist last week. This is because most organizations are reactive, not proactive, about retaining talent. They'll exploit your competence as long as you let them, but the moment you demonstrate you're willing to leave, the calculation changes. But let's talk about the absolute worst-case scenario of the competence trap, because this is where years of being too good at your job can completely destroy your career. You become so specialized in your company's specific systems and processes that your skills aren't transferable to other organizations. I've seen this happen to people who spent 10, 15, 20 years becoming experts in proprietary software or company-specific workflows. They're incredibly valuable to their current employer, but if they were fired tomorrow, they'd struggle to find equivalent positions elsewhere because their expertise is too narrow. This is the ultimate trap. You're not just stuck in your current role, you're stuck with your current employer. Your leverage drops to zero because both you and your manager know that leaving would be catastrophic for your career. The people who avoid this trap are constantly learning skills that are valuable across multiple organizations. They're thinking about their resume, their LinkedIn profile, their marketability. Even while they're doing great work for their current employer, they're building portable expertise, not company-specific knowledge. Here's something else worth considering. The competence trap doesn't just affect your current earnings, it affects your lifetime earning potential and your eventual retirement. That $50,000 difference in annual salary we talked about earlier compounds dramatically when you factor in retirement contributions. If you're making $140,000 instead of $88,800 and you're contributing 10% to your 401k, that's an extra $5,120 going into your retirement account every year. Over 30 years, assuming 7% average returns, that's an additional $500,000 in your retirement account. You're not just sacrificing current money by being stuck in the competence trap. You're sacrificing your entire financial future. You're trading your retirement security for the privilege of making your manager's job easier. Let me share something that might make you rethink your entire approach to work. The most successful people I know are competent enough to do excellent work, but strategic enough to ensure that excellence is recognized, rewarded, and leveraged for advancement. They're not working harder than you. They're working smarter about how their work is perceived. They deliver high-quality results on high-visibility projects. They make sure the right people know about their contributions. They build relationships with decision-makers. They position themselves for opportunities before those opportunities are announced. And yes, they sometimes let less important work slide or delegate it to others. This feels wrong if you've been taught that hard work alone should be enough. But let me ask you something. What good is your work ethic doing you if it's not translating into career advancement, higher compensation, or better opportunities? Pride in your work is valuable, but it's not paying your mortgage. It's not funding your retirement. It's not giving your kids better opportunities. If your commitment to excellence is making other people rich while keeping you stuck, maybe it's time to reconsider what you're actually committed to. So there you have it. Being good at your job isn't the path to success you were promised. It's often the thing keeping you from success. The competence curse is real and is probably affecting you right now if you're the person everyone counts on to get things done. Breaking free requires a fundamental shift in how you think about work, value, and advancement. It means being strategic about your efforts, protective of your time, and intentional about your visibility. It means understanding that the game isn't won by being the hardest worker. It's won by being the smartest player. Start setting boundaries today. Start building visibility tomorrow. Start looking at external opportunities next week, because the alternative is spending the next decade being exploited for your competence while watching less talented people leap over you on the career ladder. Your future self is watching the choices you make right now. Don't let them down by confusing hard work with smart work. The competence trap is optional. Walking into it with your eyes open is a choice. Choose differently.